Welcome back to another episode of Field of Screams podcast. Today we'll be talking about Hellraiser 6, Hellseeker. Now, looking at the cast before I started watching this movie, two things stood out to me that kind of made me excited. One, Dean Winters is in this, and he is the Allstate Mayhem guy. He's in those commercials where he's Mayhem. I found those pretty funny for the most part. I feel like I've grown up with those commercials in a weird way. So I was like, oh, that's cool. The Mayhem guy, he's the lead actor in this film. Like, that'll be cool. And then I noticed Ashley Lawrence is in this film. Kirsty from the first couple. So I was pretty excited. I'm like, okay, Kirsty's coming back. I know the main actor. Like, let's see what we got going here. So the movie starts off, we got Dean Winters and Kirsty. Well, Dean Winters and Ashley Lawrence, Kirsty, and the main character's name is Trevor. They get into a car accident. When the movie starts off, they're like flirting. Kirsty's laughing a bunch. They make out. Trevor loses control of his car, goes right off a bridge and straight into the water. And once that happens, Kirsty has vanished, and Trevor's trying to figure out what's going on. Now, one compliment that I've given to the movies before watching this one is they all have seemed different. They're all kind of completely different. You have one, the self-contained story. You have two, which expanded that. You get the Labyrinth and all that good stuff. Three, they make Pinhead the main villain, and you see him just kind of wreak havoc through the whole film. 4, you get the 3 crazy timeline type thing. Then 5, you get kind of the cop story where he's in his own personal hell. And I was really excited for this one. I'm like, man, what are they going to do for number 6? We got Kirsty back. How are we going to differentiate this time? Or how are we going to build upon the lore? And granted, I said when I started this, the Hellraiser movies don't have that great of a reputation. But so far through the first 5, I'm like, you know what? Are a lot of them perfect? No. But I've had fun so far. And I come across this movie. Now, as Trevor's living his life, however I want to phrase that, you can just tell his world seems off. There's a lot of figures in this movie. They'll be standing in the street corner and they'll be looking at him all weird. The people that he interacts with, again, they just seem off. And I'm going to go more into that here in a minute. But as this film was going, it felt very, very similar to number 5. It felt very weird. I was like, there's no way he's living in his own personal hell. But I feel like there was just too many hints going on throughout this. There are a ton of hallucinations going through Trevor's head. The first hour of the film, you just keep seeing stuff, and then it turns out not to be real, and then people act weird again, and then it's just rinse and repeat until you get to the last 20 minutes, and then it reveals this big plot twist. Now, one funny aspect that I was just kind of chuckling about as I was going through this movie, it literally feels like every female character that Trevor comes across, they try to seduce him. They try to jump his bones right away. And I'm like, man, I get it. The dude might be a womanizer, but literally he's at work and he's like, oh, I'm going to go get a drink of water. And then his boss will walk up and try to shove her thumb up his butt. And she's like, oh, come on, you want to. And she's really abusive towards him. And I'm like, oh my God, calm down. What are you doing? You're in the workplace. So, his boss is hitting on him. Then there's this other girl. I don't know if she's supposed to be kind of redneck. I want to kind of call her rough, but she's not exactly rough. But anyways, she'll knock on his door and she's like, ooh, you want to do stuff? And Trevor's like, no, I just really don't know what's going on. And there's just these weird lines where she's like, Trevor, are you okay? And he's like, not really. And then they just kind of look at each other and then they move on. And I'm like, that's a weird interaction. But I guess they're just trying to exaggerate that Trevor's in this weird space and this weird headspace and he can't figure out what's going on. There's another lady, I think she's a masseuse. The type of lady that puts pins in your back to kind of relieve stress. She's trying to jump his bones as well. There's even one part where he has a bunch of spikes in his back or maybe his chest. And then she gets on top of him, straddles them, and I was like, oh no, those spikes but then those spikes aren't there. So I guess it's either a continuancy error, or it was another hallucination why those pins weren't there. But yeah, she's trying to jump him as well. And she's right across the apartment. So there's a couple times he watches her undress. So that's there. I mean, if it's not all female characters, it's at least like 95% of the characters are trying to like make out or have sex with Trevor. That is their objective in this film. And to that, like, it just kind of made me laugh, because it's just like every time a woman popped up, I'm like, oh, is she going to try to get him too? And she did. And in between that, like, Trevor does like weird things, like he throws up an eel at one point, but then that disappears because it's a hallucination. Trevor has a coworker who's a male. He is not trying to have sex with Trevor, but he's also just acting very weird all the time, just like asking him questions. And, Trevor saying stuff like, man, I just got this headache and I don't know what's going on. And then like the coworker will say something like, man, people usually get headaches, like their like blood pressure's low or their blood sugar's low. Maybe eat some chocolate. And like just the interactions between them, like just everything seems off. And like everything I described, like there's other bits and pieces to where like the plot twist at the end, like it's kind of sprinkled in. But I basically described like the first hour of this film. Now it's funny because with all that going on, like I talked to my friend after watching this movie, and of course that's not all that happens in this movie. Pinhead shows up like little by little, and again it's a hallucination, and he'll just pop up, he'll deliver a line, and then he'll be gone. And I was talking to my friend, and I was like, yeah, I watched the 6th Hellraiser film. And he's like, oh, what was that about? And I'm like, oh, the Mayhem guy? And he's like, yeah, I remember him. Like, he's a good actor. And I was like, yeah, I like him too. I'm like, well, he's basically like in this hell world, and every woman he comes across is like trying to have sex with him. And then he like throws up like eels, and that happens for a very long time in the film. And he kind of laughed, and he goes, oh, that sounds like it would be entertaining and kind of funny. And I'm like, it was funny. I don't know about entertaining, though. Like, the big thing of this film that kind of aggravated me is it just felt boring. I just felt bored. And, like, while the movie was going, I'm like, man, I feel like this has been going on for a long time. I wonder if I'm close to the end. And I was about halfway through the film when I checked the time, which is a very bad sign when that happens. Now, there is reasoning to that, and it does explain that, and it starts going more into the Hellraiser territory. But I'm going to admit, like, I didn't look up if they made a script for another movie and just threw in Hellraiser things, but I would be very surprised if that was not the case, because it feels like this is a separate story, and then they tried to shoehorn in some Hellraiser things to like try to make it fit. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like the Hellraiser things that they put in, it just doesn't fit very well. It's like trying to shove a giraffe inside an elevator. It just felt very obvious, like, oh, they're throwing the lament configuration in finally. I wonder how that's going to play in. Like, oh, Pinhead showing up again. I wonder what his big deal is. So it turns out in this whole thing, because also in this like hell type world type dream state, Trevor was trying to kill Kirsty, and he is a serial cheater. That's why all these women continuously flock to him, because in real life, he was cheating on Kirsty like crazy. And we get these little flashbacks of him and Kirsty, and in the very beginning of the movie, they make him seem like a very good couple, but then you kind of find out that that's not the case, and it even gets to a point to where Trevor, for whatever reason, he gets tipped off, I think, that he should go to this like weird black market. I don't even know where he's at. It's like an underground subway that like looks creepy, and he goes to this person, and they have the lament configuration, the puzzle box, and they're like, here you go. And then like Kirsty's like all happy at home, like, hey, Trevor. And he gives her a gift, and it's the puzzle box. And of course, like, she hates that. And he's like, come on, babe, just open it. Like, try to solve the puzzle. And she gets like ticked off at him about it. Which, by the way, before they start going into this reveal on how Trevor's not that great of a person, and how him and Kirsty were kind of on the rocks, before this, the only times you really see Kirsty is him having like flashbacks, or him watching an old video with him and Kirsty. And Kirsty's kind of portrayed as this like ultimate good figure, which if you're a fan of this franchise, you probably like Kirsty, and you probably like her anyways. But I mean, like, they're literally showing her like walk in slow motion. She's like, "Oh, Trevor." And it literally reminds me of that South Park episode where the IT teacher has like the perfect wife and he keeps having flashbacks of her. And the guy's wife is like, "Watch me fly, Richard." And then, like, all of a sudden that little daydream will like turn violent because she ended up dying in a plane crash. That's literally what the flashbacks of Kirsty remind me of. And it was kind of making me laugh. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, I wanted Kirsty in this film not as a flashback person or just like this little back character. So I found that pretty annoying as well. Like, they called Ashley Lawrence up and they're like, "Hey, you gotta be in this film." And they like finally got her to agree to it. And then like she like shows up and she was like, "All right, what's my big role?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, you're going to be missing for most of this film, and we're just going to go like flashbacks and show like why your husband's a bad person and a serial cheater and someone who's like trying to kill you. By the way, he's going to like use his coworker, and they're going to like try to find ways to kill you. Yeah, it's going to be really weird and stuff, and women are going to try to have sex with him. He's going to throw up eels, and we're going to see how it goes. Oh, and there's going to be a twist at the very end, and you're going to be part of that." And like, I don't know. I'm kind of shocked that she agreed to show up for this. I'm glad she did, because it would have been weird if she just disappeared without anything. But this just does not really feel like Kirsty's character. It feels like just kind of out of left field. Now I've already kind of revealed the very ending, the plot twist. Like, by the end of it, you find out that Kirsty... So the Cenobites catch up with Kirsty, and they got her like in the hell world. And they're like, "Oh, we finally have you, Kirsty. Like, you're the ultimate negotiator, but you're not getting out of this one." And by this point, like, Kirsty's kind of fed up with Trevor because he's cheated on her like 1,000 times. And like, of course she hates all the women that he cheated on her with. And she kind of hates Trevor because like he tried giving her the puzzle box. And, I'm guessing that's what led Pinhead and the Cenobites to find her. So she's not very happy with him. So Kirsty kind of makes a deal with Pinhead yet again. And she's like, "How about instead of taking my soul, I'll sacrifice 5 people to you." And like, those 5 people are basically all the women that Trevor cheated on her with, and then Trevor himself. And then we find out that the car crashed. Like, it wasn't because they were making out and super happy as a couple. Like, she pulls a gun out on him and like shoots him. And when she shoots him, the car goes into the river, pond, ditch, whatever you want to make it be. And then the very end's like her getting out of the car after like the big reveal, and it's like, "Oh, Kirsty did something bad / evil. Like, she sacrificed 5 people. Like, that's out of character for him." And she like kind of just walks out, and she's like strutting, and the police are like, "Oh man, it's a shame what happened to your husband." And she's like, "Yeah." And then credits roll. Now, as you can tell probably by my demeanor throughout this entire episode, plus I think I said it in the beginning, I was very disappointed with this one. The first 5, I felt like I had momentum going, and I'm like, you know what? People are wrong about Hellraiser. Like, they're not perfect, but I'm enjoying what I'm watching. And then like I hit this one, and by the time I reached the end of the film, like I felt like all the wind in my sails like just kind of died down. And I'm like, man, maybe this is like the rough patch people are talking about. Like, this has to be it. And I've looked up like some other reviews, and I think they kind of fall in line with mine. It's not like I'm like reading them in depth and I'm like, "Oh, like what are they?" It's just, I don't know, why are we going this direction with the franchise? Like, I feel like there's such cool places they can take this franchise with the Cenobites. And you got Ashley Lawrence to sign on to where like Kirsty could have done some cool things. And yet we kind of do a crappier version of part 5. And it just felt very weird and out of place for Hellraiser. This is like the first time, and I mean, the 4th one, like we like go to space and we go back to ancient times, and it's also present day. And I felt like that one still took an ambitious swing. And like, I felt like they were trying to do something with the franchise. Like, even if you look at number 3 and they make Pinhead like this big evil monster, and he's like doing these quotes and just riffing like Freddy Krueger. You could hate that, but I mean, I could say at least like it was another different step of direction for the franchise. Like, I don't know, like there's some iconic things in there. 5. Again, very, very different. The vibes were different. It felt dirty. And I kind of liked the personal hell aspect of it. And I was like, you know what? It's different. I'm going to give it credit. But then I hit this one, and I'm like, this one is not very different from 5. And it doesn't do it as well as 5 does, in my opinion. So, that's what kind of made me just kind of like, man, like, what are we doing here? Do something creative. Like, this isn't that creative. And again, it felt like it was just another script, like a script made for a guy who wants to kill his rich wife. And then he like finds himself in a personal hell, and like he learns about his problems and he has to atone for it. And then they read it and they're like, well, how about we throw in some Cenobites, the lament configuration, and we just make it another Hellraiser movie? How does that sound? That sounds like exactly what they did. So I just found that disappointing. Now, I do hope these future movies that I'm going to watch, I do hope they change it up. I hope it's not always like a personal hell type story. Because, man, that would get old very fast. And I'm worried because, again, I feel like these sequels have a bad reputation. I don't care that it's a low-budget film. I've watched a lot of low-budget films. And there's some I'll defend because you can't always have a high budget. But again, I just feel like there's such cool territory you can go with these Cenobites and Pinhead, and if you can get Kirsty in there, there's just always something cool you can do with that. Like, I don't know. This one was a little crazy with the direction they chose, but I'll quit going on and on about that. I hope the next one, I saw the title's called Deader, and I was like, oh God, like, what does that even mean? That's not even a word. Like, yeah, that rabbit was dead, but the deer that got hit by the car was a little more deader. Like, what does that even mean? But I'll figure that out when I watch it. So hopefully next episode we're gonna rebound, and I'll like it a little more than this one, because this one, yeah, again, like I was very disappointed with it, especially with Dean Winters and Ashley Lawrence in it. So this has been my review for Hellraiser 6, Hellseeker. If you do like this movie, that's cool. Don't think my opinion's like fact, because it's definitely not. I do know there are fans of this movie, and that's good. Like, if you enjoyed it, I'm glad you did. I was hoping to enjoy it myself, and I just happened not to. So, if you did like it, tell me why in the comments, because I'd like to hear that. If you could give this episode a like, it gets the podcast out to other people. And again, thank you so much for listening, and until next time.